All right, and we are recording, and we're letting people into the audience now. All right, I think you can start.
Noting the hour and the presence of a quorum, I call the Acton Boxborough Regional School Committee to order. This meeting is being conducted remotely via Zoom webinar per our remote participation policy, BEDH-R. The following members are in attendance in the auditorium: Diane Baum, Adam Klein, Ginny Kremer, John Peterson, Angie So, Yeben Wang, and myself. The following are participating via Zoom: Evelyn Abaya Isa, Kira Cook, and Amy Krishnamurthy. Nora Shine is absent tonight. In an ongoing effort to make our meeting as secure as possible, we ask members of the public to view the meeting using ActonTV's YouTube channel found at the top of the agenda. Those who wish to comment during the meeting are asked to register 24 hours prior to the start of the meeting using the link also found at the top of the agenda. This meeting is also being recorded and will be posted on ActonTV's website at actontv.org. Per our remote policy, all votes will be done by roll call. I will call each member's name and they will state how they vote. Tonight's meeting looks a little different because we have the FY22 budget hearing, and so we're going to start with that, and then we'll have almost another reintroduction into the beginning of the meeting after the budget hearing. All right. So I think I'm ready to call that to order now, right? Okay. So noting the hour in the presence of a quorum, I call the FY22 budget hearing to order. After Peter and Dave's overview, we will do questions and answers from the committee, the boards, and the public. Because Robert's rules dictates that voting does not take place during a hearing, the committee will vote after the hearing is adjourned per our regular meeting agenda. And then the rest of the meeting, as other people are expecting public participation and the high school representative and all of those things that happen during our regular business meetings, will then commence. All right, so Peter, Dave, whoever's going first. Peter?
All right, thank you so much. So good evening, everyone. It's good to see you all again, and hello to audience members. So tonight we have, two purposes to the meeting. This is the public budget hearing for the FY22 budget, and it's also our final budget recommendation to the school committee. And we are requesting a vote at the end of this. We will adjourn the hearing, and then as we enter back into the main meeting, we would request a vote on the budget. I'm going to start with the idea of uncertainty, because that certainly marks this year, and it certainly marks our planning for next year. We are making the key early assumption that we will be in a full in-person programming mode for all of our students. This has been, kind of reaffirmed by the Department of Education in its most recent guidance that they anticipate being in a full return mode. We do anticipate that we will have very limited exemptions for some students who may not be medically able to return, but otherwise we are anticipating a full return to in-person programming for all students next year. What we still don't know, or what we think we may know but it's not yet clear. We still don't know the exact trajectory of the pandemic and how vaccines will roll out for young learners over the course of the spring and summer. We don't know the specific academic, social, and emotional needs of students as they return to school buildings, and then also as they enter into next school year. We're not yet sure of what the full state requirements for next year will look like, and we don't know the extent to which we might have students who need programming in a remote fashion for next year. So those are some significant unknowns. Federal relief is coming a little bit more into picture, but there are still some unknowns with that as well. I just want to thank you all for the extensive process that goes into developing the budget. This is a list of our budget subcommittee meetings, as well as some of our elected members. And I apologize, Yeben, I left you off this list. I just saw it. So I am so sorry, and I want to recognize Yeben is also a member of our capital subcommittee. So please accept my apologies for that. But we have had a total of 18 different meetings that went into the budget development process. 10 were in budget subcommittee meetings, 3 in capital subcommittee meetings. You can tell I copied and pasted from last year's slide. And then 5 full school committee meetings as well. We are at the last stage of our public budget development process. And again, this is the budget hearing as well as school committee vote on the FY22 budget. Just to quickly review a few things from earlier in the year. How best do we meet our students' post-pandemic educational needs, and how do we mitigate the financial impact to our communities? Those were our two driving questions that we thought about throughout the development process. We were able to meet many of the guidelines through the budget development process that the school committee had set out early in the process. I believe it was in October that you voted the budget guidelines. We were able to meet many of these, but we didn't get to all of them yet. And so what I want to actually do, in addition to just showing you what we were able to do, what I really want to talk about is what we were not able to do. And I'm going to put the big word on there, yet. We know that this budget is going to have to continue its development as we progress into spring. And I really want to highlight a few different things for you that we're currently in the works on planning. The 4 guidelines that we have not been able to get to within the current budget are adequately fund education programs designed to expedite recovery from the pandemic and ensure effective services and supports are in place for all students, social, emotional, and academic needs. That's something that we're currently working on. We need to continue to work on evaluating opportunities to use existing resources to align services and supports from across the district that are fiscally sustainable. So the idea of, using existing resources and fiscal sustainability certainly go hand in hand. That's something we're still working on. We're looking at programs that can fund and direct funding to students in highest need returning from the pandemic, and that's something that's also in development. And then we have some other anti-bias, anti-racist strategic initiatives that we're going to be hoping to share with you as we progress through. We know that the whole process of schooling through the pandemic has been an evolving process. We know it's going to need to continue to evolve. And so the budget we're presenting tonight addresses many of the guidelines, but it's still going to be incomplete. And we've shared that, I think, at every step of the process, that as we learn more, we need to shift our thinking around that. So I just want to make sure I'm highlighting for you that you are going to expect to see from us some additional development around budget, but it will be within the existing resources. And what I specifically want to highlight, and this is, in general, it's a slide that I showed you on Budget Saturday, but I've added a couple of things. What you will see from us in either the next meeting or possibly the meeting after that is a proposal to realign some of our resources so we can further improve and develop a tiered system of supports at all of our elementary schools. That's something that we've been talking about as a leadership team. Trying to do anything that is strategic and planful for the following year has been particularly challenging this year because every 6 weeks we're kind of readjusting current educational plans. So it's taken longer to develop, but it's also something that as we've been able to watch our students and their needs through the pandemic, our leadership team has been continuously talking about what we think students will need coming out of the pandemic. So I actually don't feel like this is something we wanted to rush through, but it's something that we wanted to be very thoughtful about in developing. So do anticipate that we will come back to you and talk about how we can continue to align the existing resources of the district to really think about a tiered system of supports at our elementary schools. That has been a strategic goal of ours for a number of years. Those of you that have heard about, MTSS, I think those words have been getting used for about 5 years. We think this is the year to try and move that work forward and really, take a big leap forward in terms of what we're doing around tiered systems of support. So this budget doesn't reflect that. We will continue to hone it, but I can't stress enough that will be within the existing resources of what the district has. So I'm going to turn this over to Dave, and I'm going to allow him to just provide a brief update on the assessment model. Dave, can you turn your microphone on?
It would help.
Dave, you're muted.
That's a good one. So there are no changes from the budget that was presented 2 years ago, but there was a clerical error that the Boxborough town accountant brought to my attention, which overcharged Boxborough, coincidentally, by the amount you see, $9,111. It was a cell formula in my spreadsheet that I did not manually foot to determine the accuracy of it. So we fixed that We've made some minor changes that resulted from a $9,000 change on the percentage data. And so the next slide shows just the change from you see the column with the yellow numbers at the bottom. That was what was presented 2 weeks ago. And the far right column with the blue shaded numbers are the right ones. So everything above that has not changed. The budget's the same, the revenue sources are the same, the reserve usages are the same, the total assessment is the same, but the allocation between Acton and Boxborough is changed by that $9,000. And so Acton's increase will be 2.99%, Boxborough's increase 4.56%. I apologize for the math error, but fortunately it was done in time that we can rectify it without a lot of red tape. So here's just a snapshot of the last 5 years of budget and assessment history. These are changes, and the changes reflect a 5-year average, a budget average of about 3.7%. If we adjust for the anomaly of this year's budget containing the first year on the new school debt service, the 5-year average is under 3% for a budget increase. Similarly, the Acton and Boxborough average assessments for the last 5 years are 4% and 2% respectively. But if we adjust for the anomaly of the new school debt, the average increase on the Acton assessment has been just over 3%, and the average increase to Boxborough has been just over 1%. Lastly, because this is just a brief update, you'll see on the left-hand side of this, that slide was cut and pasted from something we presented 2 weeks ago. It's the existing federal programs as of that date. What's on the right side are what we know at this point from the recently passed American Rescue Plan, and you can see the amounts that have been allocated as far as direct municipal aid to the 2 towns. Quite a range, and the range is reflective of the fact that the minimum number there is, and these are from a Mass Municipal Association estimate that has been made available. The lower amounts are the amount of direct aid going to the municipality. The higher amount that you see there is the lower number, plus the amount that otherwise would have gone to Middlesex County if it was an active county government. But because it isn't, the chart says abolished county funding automatically transferred to the municipality. So even though it says a range, it's actually 2 components, and by my read, Acton should be getting 6.9 million, Boxborough should be getting 1.7 million. ESSER 3 is my estimate at this point. It's based on just some overall wording as far as what will be made available through the U.S. Department of Education through DESE, and we're thinking it's going to fall somewhere to the district. That goes directly to the district, between $750,000 to $1 million, but we don't have anything concrete more than just a ballpark estimate. And I've checked that with some colleagues, and it seems like relative to Acton Boxborough, you put it in perspective of what we got for ESSER 2, and it should be a proportional thing, Acton Boxborough compared to other districts, ESSER 2 versus ESSER 3. So that's what it looks like. These allocations have multi-year applicability, but we don't really have a good handle yet on specifically what they can be used for. My indication from a really good source, I read the Act, says that one of the things that it can be used for is revenue replacement. So there could be some broader opportunities for use of these funds than there were in some of the previous grants. And so we'll ask if there are questions on anything about the substance or the ranges that have been used in this presentation. And John, if you haven't figured it out, you're welcome.
All right, so I'll call on you first, John, but just so everyone's clear, the way that we need to do this tonight, just so that it's not confusing and so that I can be used to looking back up at the two things. So we'll do school committee questions and anything first before doing public participation questions. Okay, John, go ahead.
Thank you. Since you had that nice slide, I'll use that to segue into congratulating, both you and Peter and the staff for, as Wayne Gretzky would say, skating to where the puck is going to be. That is really, the art of management, is to stay ahead of the curve. And I think you've done a good job. And I liked what Peter said with respect to what I'm presenting to you tonight will change, because it should change as we get additional information through the year. And so I look forward to us optimizing it. I wanted to comment that if this was a normal year, which it obviously is not, we would be 2 weeks away from Acton Town Meeting. And we would have actually had this hearing some time ago. The way this has worked this year, just for people who haven't followed the calendar, is that we are now driving our budget to service Boxborough's town meeting. And Acton Town Meeting is going to be a while from now. So I fully expect that by the time we come up to Acton Town Meeting, we will actually be able to shed a lot of light on what the American Rescue Plan really will mean for Acton and Boxborough. And so then the only question I had about that is, if you looked at the percentages of the town monies that actually wound up coming to the school from this first round, what are those percentages, just so people can think about what that might represent to us when the dust actually settles for the second round?
Was that a question or a request for further information?
The question is, what was the percentage
okay.
of the first round that came to the towns? Because since we don't have any idea what will actually happen, but we would like some indication, what percent, we'll just use that as the marker for the second round.
Yeah, my apology. I thought you were keying us up for getting ready to present in June. If you go back to the slide before the driving range, it may not be, I'm prepared to read it, but if it's visible, we might as well use it. So you can see in the middle of the left-hand side, CARES Act, Acton was allocated $2.1 million, Boxborough $563,000. Of that, we have received of Boxborough $160,000. We've requested of Acton, their payment is pending, $866,000. So $1 million out of 2.6. Do the math, 40%. I would say that it would seem highly unlikely to correlate that percentage with another $8.5 million haul by the two towns collectively, but for what it's worth, that was the proportion of the last one.
Ginny?
So that was my question too. I mean, have there been any preliminary conversations or expectations? I mean, to me, the district is, I don't know. I mean, is there any indication of what the share for the district is going to be?
There is no share to the district. So DESE has made it clear that these funds will flow to the communities, just like the CARES Act funds did. And regional districts are eligible to receive funds from their host communities upon arriving at consensus, and just as we did the first time.
So it's just up to the Board of Selectmen?
Well, I think the way it happened the first time is they didn't give us a number, and we didn't ask for a number. We presented them with some concrete projects and proposals that we spent money on. One of them being the community food insecure program, which we've requested additional funding from them, whether it's from their remaining CARES Act allocation to this point or the next round. But this is so hot off the press that we certainly have not had any kind of meetings about how to divvy up a 7 plus $1.7 million pie.
Thank you.
If I can just add to that, Ginny, my experience working with both the town managers on this has been they're extremely collaborative and very understanding of the needs of the school district. So, I have no concerns about continuing to work with the two towns around making sure that needs of the district and needs of the towns are met in a good and fair and equitable way.
Diane?
Yeah, this is the part where we're supposed to be very thankful that we have an ALG process, and that, because not all towns do that, so that's a built-in way to get people talking to each other and knowing what's going on with the budgets and different, departments and so forth. I just wanted just clarity, and I think I only got like a chance to just glimpse at these numbers. You said that there's multi-year applicability. So just to be clear, so we may get this money in FY21, but it can be used in FY21, FY22, and maybe even after that?
So it's important, and I'll correct you as I see fit if it's warranted. The we and the this money, I think you're talking about the ESSER 3 money specifically. The CARES Act, whatever it's going to be called, the money directly allocated to the municipalities, there's no guidance that I've seen yet on that, just a table with allocations by community. For ESSER 3, what I have been told is the window for applying for it, it's going to be just like ESSER 1 and ESSER 2. You need to apply for it. You need to present a budget. The budget can be amended. And because of the workings of pass-through grants, the funds will actually be available for use through September of 2024, which is into FY 2025. That doesn't mean anything as far as, then we should squirrel these away in our E&D reserve or in a stabilization reserve. We will have to systematically and thoughtfully come up with a spending plan to try to prioritize things that relate to getting kids back to school that otherwise would be something that we wouldn't have need to budget, trying not to build them into our operating base budget, from which there's the dreaded budget cliff when those funds are no longer available. So nominally to say that these funds are available through September of 2024 doesn't mean really anything as far as putting a stopwatch on us. It just means that there's a lot more flexibility from, if you remember, ESSER 1 and the CVRF and FEMA initially was, you need to commit and spend these funds by December 30th, 2020. Everything since then, and especially this next round of ESSER funding, will be relaxed from the standpoint, apparently, of eligible uses and time frame.
I just wanted to point out that apparently our live stream is not working on YouTube right now. It is working on the ActonTV.org website, but the YouTube live stream isn't. We've gotten a couple of notifications from people who were trying to go to the YouTube stream and we're not able to see that.
Okay, so we actually don't control the YouTube stream. That's through ActonTV, but I think they're listening, and hopefully that will get up and running.
Yep. And not that we could tell anybody right now that they could go to ActonTV.org to see it, because they can't see us saying that they can't see it.
Right.
But I just wanted to point that out since we're in an open hearing right now.
Yeah, and it is on our website as well.
Okay, so if people who are watching could listen to that and let your friends know, that would be an effective way of figuring that out. Okay. Are there other school committee questions before we move Yes?
Yeah, I want to go back to the CARES allocation and just confirm that the numbers that we saw that were requested from the two towns were equal to our split, help me with the word, Dave, because you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, the proportional allocation between the two towns, exactly.
Yes,
That,
thank
and you're right, I should have made that point, but they were divided on the same basis as the assessment.
Thank you.
Any of you, oh, Evan, you got one? Okay.
So naive question. So I just looking at the slides for not this one, it's for the meeting. So here it says for the budget, it actually is not counted that money into the budget, right?
Correct.
So here, from here, we probably, so like if we have say 40%, like your calculation, if that's right, then we're gonna expect the 3 million. So is that gonna be used, how are that gonna affect our assessment? Is it gonna, what does that mean to the, town assessment will be same, right?
Yep, sorry to interrupt. It won't affect the FY22 assessment. This is money that gets received, and the wording is without need for further appropriation. So this money does not go into the general fund coffers of the district, but is intentionally set aside and subject to eligibility rules.
I also think I saw something out of Ed Markey's office recently with some clarification, and I think one of the intentions of this money was that it could not be used to just, have a direct correlation to lower people's taxes at the local level. Like, it wasn't designed to say, look, there's extra federal relief coming in, you can cut your budgets by that amount and just replace it with federal relief. It was actually designed as additional stimulus money for needs of communities and schools.
Yeah, but you have to turn your mic back on so they can't hear you.
So for example, the capital stabilization fund, can you replenish that?
I would say no, from the standpoint of telling the oversight agency that's what we're intending to do with it, is to transfer it to an existing special revenue fund. I would have to say that answer is no, but I don't have the specific guidelines on it.
It's possible, though, that there are current fiscal year costs that could qualify as expenses. And if that's the case, then that would increase the amount of turnback at the end of the year, which the school committee could then determine to allocate appropriately.
Okay, I don't see other school committee hands. So if there are people in the audience that have questions specifically related to the budget, this isn't like regular public participation time, this is just related to this budget hearing, then you are welcome to raise your hand and we will elevate you to be able to speak. Just a reminder, so it looks like we have one. Steve is raising his hand. Just a reminder that you're limited to 3 minutes.
Sorry, Steve.
Hi. Hi, good evening. Hi, everybody. Steve Ballard from Boxborough. I had some other question that I wanted to ask, but I want to first just heard about this ESSER 3 and the enticing idea of getting $9 or $10 million to the two towns in the next version. And I'm looking at the March 3 guidance from the government on ESSER 2 funds. And it says that municipalities are allowed to get up to 75% of their funds to their school districts. So the 40% that you just mentioned of the first two rounds would seem kind of low. It also goes on to answer some of the questions that were asked here that you didn't have answers to, I believe, as to how the money can be used, for funds. I mean, I think this is what happened with Deval Patrick before. With federal funds, they were used for things that otherwise would be covered by the state. But anyway, that's in the March 3, 2021 guidance for ESSER 2 funds. that I'm looking at. But the question I had before this came up was, well, first off, so I hope you guys can push Acton and Boxborough to give 75% or as much as possible of that money to the schools who need it. Because you guys have been over backwards to, reduce your budget down to make the people at ALG and particularly the Acton people happy because they're at the levy limit. My question here is this: I've seen looking at the budget, and I don't see that the budget subcommittee or your school committee has actually deliberated, and we'll talk about that before, on the budget at all the whole year, and even now in the budget. But what I see is with this budget, a big problem I see, given that what Peter just said, those 4 points that you're not doing yet. A big one there was the align resources to meet the needs of students in a fiscally sustainable manner. Well, I see you are doing the second part of that. You're being fiscally sustainable. And you have loads of money in your, your reserve funds, and you're talking about we're getting back on track right away to catch up on the plan we had for a capital plan. So we're going to get right back in the groove. We missed a year, but we're going to catch up. And on OPEB, we're going to keep doing that. We're going to catch up. But you know what? Guess what? All day kindergarten, forget about it. We get to start back at $3,750 and tax those parents. 300 kids coming into kindergarten in the fall. They have been, hurt like everyone else because of this pandemic. And now you're going to have them. Last year, the kids only had half day, so there was no parent tax. Now we're going to start with $3,750. So just like the state's doing with Student Opportunity Act in making justice delayed, which basically is justice denied, they're taking that and starting over with what was already a ridiculous multi-year plan to kind of incrementally get to some kind of equity. Well, you know what? We're starting over with.
Is there anyone else that has a question about the budget? If not, then I will entertain a motion to adjourn the FY22 budget hearing.
So moved.
Second.
We will do a roll call vote. Adam?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Yevon? Diane?
Yes.
Ginny?
Yes.
Angie?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Kira?
Yes.
Evelyn?
Yes.
And myself, yes. All right, thank you. We've now returned to the open business meeting. And now I will entertain another motion.
Would you like me to read the motion?
I would love for you to read the motion, John.
I move that the total appropriation for the Acton Boxborough Regional School District for the fiscal year July 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2022 be set at $99,719,222, and that the member towns be assessed in accordance with the education reform law and the terms of the regional agreement and amendments thereto as follows. Acton, $67,543,928, consisting of a capital assessment of $5,634,248 and an operating assessment of $61,909,680, and Boxborough, $12,676,080, consisting of a capital assessment of $952,358 and an operating assessment of $11,723,722, with the remainder to be accounted for by the following sources of funds. Anticipated Chapter 78 in the amount of $15,341,311. Anticipated state transportation aid in the amount of $1,930,403. Anticipated state charter school aid in the amount of $100,000. Anticipated Medicaid reimbursement of $250,000. Anticipated investment earnings of $265,000. And estimated miscellaneous revenues of $17,500. And transfers from the following district reserves. Excess and deficiency fund in the amount of $1,245,000, transportation stabilization fund in the amount of $200,000, capital stabilization fund in the amount of $150,000.
Second.
Are there any questions before we take our vote? Nope. All right. Adam?
Yes.
It doesn't.
Too many open mics. Yes.
Yes.
John, sorry. John didn't even wait for me to call on him. Yevon?
Yes.
Diane?
Yes.
Ginny?
Yes.
Angie? Yes. Evelyn?
Yes.
Kira?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
And myself, yes. All right, thanks, everybody, for your work on that. All right, so now we're going to have a second welcome. I don't have a whole lot of additional things to share, but I know that Angie reached out to me and would like to speak. So Angie, I'm going to give you a second to share what you wanted to share.
Thank you, Tessa. And as you know, that it's just so tragic to see what happened in Atlanta and all the rise in the anti-Asia events. What is most upsetting to me is that not until something tragic happened that we become awakened. We have Black Lives Matter, now added Stop Asian Hate. Will we add more? Do Asians, who we viewed as model minority, experience racism? On ABC News, it stated that Asian Americans were considered a high-risk group even before the pandemic. In addition, Asian Americans have always had to live with the invisibility because Asian Americans are viewed as a group that's upwardly mobile and not in need of extra help or attention. In history, the Chinese Exclusion Act was the only US law to exclude a particular ethnic group. Rock Spring Massacre, Tacoma riot, and other incidents target Chinese, just to mention a few. Recently, the Center of the Study of Hate and Extremism at California State University found a 149% increase in anti-Asian crimes compared to 2019. In 2020 alone, there were more than 3,800 reported anti-Asia racist incidents. Many others are not reported. As we all know, racism can have serious mental health impact. Quote in one news interview that I saw, "We're tired." Evelyn was exactly on point saying, enough is enough. Yes, Asian and Asian Americans experience racism. Do our more than 30% Asian students feel they are accepted as who they are and not anything else? The work to stop racism will not end until any Asian Americans are no longer challenged with questions such as, where are you coming from? Why do you speak English so well? Or mocked their culture. Asian American, other American, we are all American. Nobody's at anything less. I would like to see the school having proactively counseling that helps students to adequately respond when racism occurs. Enrich an environment that empowers students to speak up when racism occurs, but not scared and post anonymously on social media. Anyone who is scared because of racism, please speak up. At the same time, as a community, we need to listen to different perspectives, even if you disagree with them. Disagreement is different from racism. Make an effort to understand the background and why. It's challenging, but I will end at AB Strong. Tolerance and respect is here at AB. At the school community, at all schools and the community, I'm looking forward to a safer and stronger AB, and it starts from you and me. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Angie. All right, it looks like we have Rick here, yes?
Adam is actually.
Oh, okay, sorry, yes. Adam, looks like we've got Rick here.
We do, and I have promoted Rick to a panelist. So Rick, you can go ahead and unmute and provide us with your update. There he comes.
Welcome, Rick.
Hi, I'm really sorry about that. I was in the middle of a Boy Scout meeting, so I missed this part, but I can give my update right now. So should I just start?
Go right ahead.
Okay. So today I'll be providing an update about the major concerns for the upcoming state MCAS exam and further concerns about going back to school in MCAS. And basically the MCAS is, basically parents are worried about the MCAS because it's not gonna, oh, can I quickly do something before getting back? I'm really sorry. I'm like doing something right now. Can I come back later? Or I'm really sorry about this.
We can try and come back, Rick. We need to do public participation, and then we have a presentation, and we have some people in the audience who are waiting to do that presentation. So if you need like 2 minutes or 5 minutes, then that's probably okay. But if it needs,
I'll take 10 minutes. Sorry.
All right, we'll see what we can do, Rick. Okay, so then at this time, I'll say that this is the time for public participation. So if there are members who registered and who would like to participate now for items that are not on the agenda, you have 3 minutes for us to hear from you. And I think that, Mike, you are raising your hand.
Mike, go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Mike Balulescu. I'm an Acton resident, parent, and RJ Gray social studies teacher. I'd like to use my time tonight to respond to some of the disappointing and disheartening comments I heard from fellow parents at last week's school committee meeting. This pandemic has been hard on all of us, and I understand personally the frustration and pain that all parents feel for what our kids have lost over the last calendar year. However, blaming our teachers and administrators for what COVID-19 has taken from our students is cruel and unfair to the incredible staff we have here in our district. With only a few exceptions this year, our school buildings have remained open during a global pandemic, and that is because of the brave teachers and administrators who have worked on the front lines since September. We've provided an in-person education to our students despite unprecedented public health challenges, and that has been done on the backs of our teachers and administrators working nights and weekends to completely reinvent education in the age of COVID-19. One parent last week said that this year has been, and I quote, a joke. I don't think there is anything funny about the sacrifices our staff members have made this year for the students of Acton and Boxborough, including for my own children, who have had the opportunity to learn in a classroom thanks to the vision and determination and selflessness of their teachers and administrators. What I have seen this year from my colleagues across the district has been nothing short of extraordinary. In my 16 years teaching here, I have never been more proud to be part of our faculty, and I am so grateful to our staff across the district who have given so much of themselves to make this year work. That needs to be said just as loudly as what we all heard last Thursday night. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. I don't think that I see any other hands up in the audience. So with that, I will turn it over to Peter for your superintendent's update.
All right, so thank you very much. And we're going to go a little bit out of order here, but we are so pleased to be able to welcome our special guest with us tonight. I'm pleased to introduce, and she's sitting right across the chasm from me. This is Ms. Jennifer Treslow, who is my recommended appointee for the position of Special Education Director for the Acton Boxborough Regional School District. As you know, we have been through multiple searches for the Director of Special Education. And before I say a little bit about Jennifer, I want to thank Debbie Dixon. I remember calling her after our first 2 unsuccessful searches and saying, geez, would you fill in for 1 year? Can you get us through? And, you know, she was enjoying retirement and she stepped into a pandemic. And probably the hardest world a special education director has ever had to navigate. And I know she says on a daily basis this is the hardest she's ever worked in her lifetime. So I am so appreciative of Debbie for all of the work she did. But I want to turn back to Jen here. We're so excited to introduce her to you and let her say a few words, but I'll just tell you a little bit about, actually, I'm going to let her tell you a little bit about herself. You don't need to hear me talk. I'll do that later. But Jennifer, you know, please, you know, you can introduce yourself to the committee, but we're just so excited to have you and welcome you to AB.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here. I was so excited that I left my mask in the car, and you probably heard me say, oh my gosh, I'm so embarrassed my mask is in the car. So I'm very excited to be here. I was thrilled to spend the past few weeks interviewing with the Acton Boxborough staff and just learned so much about the district. Just so you guys know a little bit about myself, my background is a special education teacher. I've worked with students with autism as well as significant cognitive and physical disabilities, as well as students with social emotional disabilities. I've also been an administrator in private and public schools, day, residential schools, as well as hospitals, both here and in Michigan. I have been in the Weston Public Schools for the past 5 years. While in Weston, we worked really hard to strengthen our programs for students with dyslexia and language-based learning disabilities, as well as fortify our programming for students with social emotional disabilities. Prior to that, for 10 years, I was an assistant principal for student services at Brown Middle School in Newton. And I have to say, my middle schoolers would be laughing right now because I'm terrified of microphones. And I was one of the few assistant principals that could do lunch duty with no microphone. So they would be very proud of me right now. But while at Newton, our middle school did build 3 programs for students on the autism spectrum, and we were very successful in keeping many students in district, as well as transitioning students up to the high school. So I've spent the last 2 weeks, like I said, interviewing students, interviewing, although I think there were some students on the panels, but interviewing with staff here and administrators, and my interests and excitement around program development definitely was what drew me to Acton, and actually came out as a theme between the staff and the administrators that I met with as something that they're really looking forward to within the district in terms of thinking about how we can strengthen and look at our programs, not only for students with social emotional issues, but also looking at our students with language-based learning disabilities. Personally, I grew up in Connecticut, went to school in Vermont, landed in Massachusetts because of grad school. I am a mom of 2. I have one daughter who's about to graduate from college, and I hear it's going to be at Fenway, so I'm very excited about that. And my son, who called me as I was driving up here, said, Mom, just tell them I'm surviving COVID college. He is a freshman. So again, I'm really excited to be here, happy to answer if you have any questions or anything, but it's a wonderful opportunity to join all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. It's when Peter said that you were going to be here in person, I was like, wow, so exciting. It almost feels like normal. We're used to all of our administrators and everything always zooming in. So, well, I mean, now that we've been back for 2 meetings, but it's nice to meet you in person. Does anyone on the committee have a question for Jennifer? John?
So, with your children in college, you've now survived, primary and secondary school. So, I'm sure parents who are listening and, staff members who are listening would be interested in what you took away from your own children's experiences and how people should be thinking about the ups and downs that every student is going to experience during the course of their education.
That's a very good question. I think one of the things I've learned is my 2 children are very different, and their experiences were very different, and how they negotiated school really taught me to see them as individuals. At the same time, what I've tried to work with them on at different times is really asking for help when you need it, because I think as they were negotiating school, my son, was very athletic. My daughter was more into the arts, and really enjoyed school, but at different times really thought about if it was a particular class that was challenging and how to negotiate that while also handling all the social media pressures that kids are experiencing nonstop these days. And so I think what I looked for and tried to support them with, that I would think about with the students who are here, again in Acton Boxborough, is just really balance. and how to reach out for help if needed to negotiate things. But then also, we often have had a conversation about sort of sticking with things and not giving up. And I think those are themes that my own kids have said, I could be a bit of a broken record, but that have served them well once they negotiated the transition to school. I think for my son, who is a freshman in college, you know, and watching what he's experienced over the past year, I think that we're going to have to be asking them and ourselves questions about, you know, sort of how to fill in those pieces that they sometimes don't even realize that they're missing, but it comes up at different times. So again, I think resilience and asking for help.
Diane?
Hi, so I've been the Cpac Liaison for 5 years, and I don't have a question. I just want to welcome you. We've been through a lot here, with a lot of changes, so welcome, and we are so glad you're here.
Great, thank you. I'm very excited to be here.
All right, I don't think I see other questions. I wasn't going to ask a question either because I was going to say something similar to what Diane said. And I've also been a Cpac liaison for a couple of years, and we are just really grateful that you're joining us. So is there a motion to appoint Ms. Jennifer Treslow to the position of Director of Special Education, serving as the Administrator of Special Education effective July 1st, 2021?
So moved.
Second.
All right. There's no other questions. We'll do a roll call vote. Adam?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Yeben?
Yes.
Diane?
Yes.
Ginny?
Yes.
Angie?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes, and welcome.
Kira?
Yes, and welcome.
Evelyn?
Yes, and welcome.
And myself, yes, with gratitude, which is a personal joke amongst the committee, which maybe you'll come to understand it at some point. It was a former member who used to end every vote with that. So welcome. We are very thankful that you are joining us. And
Thank you.
all right, so Peter, you want to do the second part of your update?
Absolutely. So Jen, thank you so much for coming. You are welcome to stay and hang out. You're welcome to head out and probably eat dinner as well, and see family and things like that. So thank you. Welcome on board. We are all thrilled to have you, and we're so confident that you're just going to be an awesome member of our leadership team. So welcome. So, good evening, everyone. It feels, you know, like we're a meeting and a half in, and I'm giving the superintendent's update that usually comes at the beginning. I just want to, you know, recognize and thank Angie for her comments earlier in the meeting. I think, you know, we certainly have seen a rise in, you know, rhetoric directed toward Asian members of our community, and we're seeing that in our schools as well, and I think it's important that we recognize that. Dawn, I was going to, you know, put you on the spot as I was thinking, you know, of Angie's comments. Because I know you highlighted a few of the things that we've been doing in schools, and I don't know if you mind just sharing those for a minute, because I think, you know, it's important to note, you know, things that we are doing, and I think some of the work of our students has been really fantastic.
Sure. So one of the things that I shared last night was a highlight from our Dear Asian Youth Club at the high school. They put together a wonderful presentation that had a whole lot of historical pieces, as well as really moving quotes about anti-Asian sentiment and xenophobia and the likes that they presented in advisory earlier this week with their teachers. So anytime we have students that are, and so many of our clubs at the high school are advocacy based, and so it's always exciting to see our young activists getting excited about things and really reaching out to support colleagues and peers who are really deeply affected by this. These sorts of events affect all of us deeply. They affect us deeply when we know, you know, that 30% of our community is Asian, and they they certainly affect our Asian community significantly as well. So we wanted to recognize that. Additionally, our junior high principal had an open Zoom today for his students. I know Principal Lab at Blanchard also did something similar. I believe he opened it up to parents as well who just want to come and sort of have a coffee, restorative circle style. He's really good at those. If you've never been to one, they're great. And I know that some other principals were pulling some things together today, if not anything else, but sending something out to their community to let them know that, you know, we're thinking of folks. The other piece that came to mind, I think that was pretty much.
The upstander training?
Oh, yes, yes, yes. We are sending through the United Way. Actually, this one's through Danny's Place specifically, but they are supporting 25 of our youth to go to the TAB training, so training for active bystanders. The United Way is also, through their Racial Justice Coalition, is also sending a number of community members to that training with the hopes that some of us will become actual trainers for it and can continue that in the community, because that's a huge piece of this work moving forward. So.
Great, thank you. And do we have some upstander training coming to the whole student body at the high school as well?
We do.
Great.
Yes, we do on the first week of April.
So we are working on a lot of those initiatives, and I just want to, you know, thank you for your comments, because I think they're so poignant, but I also want to let you know that we recognize the challenges you're posing, as well as all of the other challenges we've had this year. And I'm also going to highlight, you know, one thing that we're thinking about is how females in our schools are treated as well. And, you know, that's something that's been on the front of our minds and we've been planning for as well. So, you know, we'll have more information about that in the next week or so that we'll be sending out to the community. So we're excited about that.
Add something quickly, please.
Sure.
I really appreciate your comments, Angie, and I've been reading a lot about this, and I know, you know, a lot of us have, since this whole, you know, empowerment of saying the quiet part out loud. You know, it's really, really troubling, but more than 50% of our student body are female, and I know that 6 of the 8 women who were murdered were Asian American. 2, you know, apparently were not, and they are women who are, you know, working, have been treated historically and commonly as just disposable and, you know, not important in any way, shape, or form. And it's something that I think is, you know, just troubling, you know, in addition to the Asian piece being troubling, but the way that, you know, women are regarded, held in low regard by a lot of people is also really troubling. And I think that that's something that, you know, all our girls need support around that. So thank you.
Evelyn, it looks like, has her hand up. Go right ahead, Evelyn.
Yes. So thank you, Tessa. So I just wanted to thank Angie for her statement today, and just to say that I, you know, personally stand with the Asian community nationwide, but particularly in our community. And as I have always said, an injustice to one group is an injustice to all. I have always gone under the premise that this hate would always trickle down to other groups. It always starts somewhere, but it always would trickle down to other groups. And it is very important for us to support each other in our communities, as individuals, as friends, and in this nation, because this fight is not for one group. And as we think about our own immediate community and the leaders that we elect, we have to understand that when we talk about marginalization, microaggression, racism, misogyny, whatever it is, it's not about one group. It's about all of us. And we have to band together to fight this. Because if we don't, these are the things we're going to see. And as much as I hate that this happened, and I have been posting on social media that this has to stop, even before this happened, the last few days, I just feel like in this community, we're beginning to realize this fight is not a black fight. It is not a people of color fight. It is for all of us. And we have to stand together. And that's why when we think about this, we have to think about it in a very comprehensive manner and think about how we can make everyone in America, Acton, Boxborough, live together as one. This is not about just me or Kira or whoever. It's about all of us. And once they are able to succeed with one group, they will go to the other group. And that's just how history has always shown this to happen. And so I stand by you, Angie. And, you know, when I was hearing you read your statement, it really was sad that we got into this point as a community, as a nation. But it is something that I want all of us to really think about, that it's not a fight of one. We all have to band together and do it. And more importantly, we have to elect leaders in this community that recognize that this is a problem and stand by us and are willing to make the changes. Because what happened in Atlanta can happen in our backyard. It can happen in our neighborhood. It can happen anywhere else. And I just want people who are listening today to realize that it is important that we put in place leaders that understand this and support us. But I stand by the Asian community. My heart goes out to you. And anything I can do as an individual, as a school committee member to help, I'm willing to do so. Thank you.
Is there anyone else? Peter, you ready to continue? Okay, go ahead.
So, you know, I want to just highlight a few other things. I'm going to talk just briefly about, you know, leadership updates. As you know, we've had 3 searches going on. We were very excited to be able to welcome Joni Dean as the new high school principal. You just met Ms. Jennifer Truslow, who is now the new special education director for us. And we are in the final stages of the McCarthy Town principal search. We hosted 2 finalists. We hosted Christy Nealon, who is a former Miriam teacher and current assistant principal at the Center School in Stowe. She visited us on Monday. And also Ms. Kelly O'Brien, principal of West Brookfield Elementary School, visited us on Tuesday. During their visits, both candidates had an opportunity to meet with stakeholder groups that included students, staff, and administrators. Both candidates then had an opportunity to speak with families on Tuesday night. So we're currently in the process of checking references and hope to have an announcement at some point early next week. I want to provide a few updates around the transition to full in-person learning, and I'm going to kind of go by grade level. Kindergarten, you know, that was a comment that we heard earlier in the public comment section of the meeting. And, you know, I want to recognize that we just shared a letter with our kindergarten families and let them know that unfortunately we're not able to transition our half-day kindergarten program to a full-day program. As you know, prior to the pandemic, our district had discussed and begun a process to transition to universal all-day kindergarten. Unfortunately, because our staffing model was still built on a half-day program, we do not have sufficient staff to offer all-day kindergarten this year and maintain our remote sections for families learning in that model. So unfortunately, we're going to have to continue with the current half-day program for kindergarten. DESE requires 425 hours for half-day kindergarten programs. So when they say, you know, they're transitioning all students kindergarten through grade 6 to full in-person learning, kindergarten, that means full half-day or full all-day K, depending on what the district model is. Our program currently exceeds that standard, even as we have it built this year. But what we are doing is we believe in the additional in-person days. So the Wednesdays where students are currently remote, we're going to actually alternate the AM and PM cohorts being able to come in for an additional half day. So all of our kindergarten students, you know, it's not much, and we wish we could do more, but they will get an additional 4 or 5 days over the course of the year of in-person kindergarten experience. So we've communicated that out to families. We are providing our kindergarten families the same opportunity to switch between programs as we've provided every other student in the district. So the kindergarten survey that went out, we had delayed it because we were trying to find out if we could try to get to an all-day K program. But that kindergarten survey went out a few days later than the elementary survey. So we've left it open and it closed today. So early next week, we'll be able to notify kindergarten families of class placement and things like that. So just a quick status update on kindergarten. Elementary grades 1 through 6, the transition to full in-person learning for elementary students is on Monday, April 5th. We had approximately 125 students request changes from the remote learning program to the in-person program, and 8 students requested changes from in-person to remote learning. As I had indicated to you before, we were unsure of what that would mean in terms of how we structured all of our programs, but I am so pleased to report to you tonight that thanks to a lot of creativity on the part of our principals and flexibility on the part of our classroom teachers, we were able to place all 125 students into their homeschool classrooms without the need to impact classroom teacher staffing in the remote learning program. So our remote learning program gets to continue in its current form, and all of the students who wanted to return get to return to their home schools. So we sent out, I believe, notice earlier today to our families, notifying them of classroom placement and homeschool placement. So that's very exciting for those families. Our attention turned this week, not just to trying to fit kids into classrooms, but to thinking about the quality of how we could help students return to full in-person learning. One thing that I don't want to underestimate is that we will have, some of our kindergarten and first grade students are coming into schools. The first graders last year will have been out of school longer than they were ever in school. And that's really significant. And then similarly, the kindergartners, as we welcome them, they will never have been in our brick and mortar buildings. They will have been in school, but they will not have been in the brick and mortar buildings. And so there's a lot to learn. And then even our other elementary students, it is a huge transition as students think about coming back. And we don't want to underestimate the work that we need to do to make that transition successful for our kids. So one thing we are doing, we're thinking carefully about the week before, which is 2 weeks from now. We're thinking carefully about the week before that April 5th date. And what we are doing is we are going to have all of our classroom teachers in the remote program and in the in-person learning program have an opportunity to conference with each other about each student that's transitioning. And in addition, we will be offering a conference to the family that both teachers can attend. The remote teacher gets an opportunity to close out their time from September to April with the remote families, but the new teacher also has an opportunity to listen to what's being discussed and just say hello and welcome the new students. So that's something that's in process, and we're also working very hard to make sure our English language educators and special educators are involved in those meetings as well, so that we provide good transition. That's going to be a lot of scheduling that needs to take place for that to happen for 125 students, but it's something we're working on. In addition, our school leadership is working on running orientation programs for all of the students who are switching programs. So students coming into the brick and mortar programs, we will offer kind of an outdoor orientation where students and families can come in, learn about the school protocols, just like what we did at the beginning of the year, because our remote students have not had safety protocols like what we've had in our in-person schooling. So they'll have an opportunity to learn about protocols, and then our students will have an opportunity to go in with our administrative team and actually tour the building, see their new classroom, and really get a sense of what they're going to be coming to the next week. We are also inviting our kindergarten and first grade families to join those students on the tours. As you know, our protocols right now are that we don't have visitors in our building, our COVID-19 protocols. We do think it's so important, particularly for our youngest students, that a family member can accompany them on that transition, that we are changing our protocols on those days and making an exception in that case. We can't do that for all families, in particular grades 2 through 6, but those students have had a year or even a year, almost 2/3 in our schools, so we feel more confident in their ability to be a little bit more independent on that. That's a lot that needs to take place. And so what we are looking to do is schedule 3 half-days on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of the week before April 5th. That allows students to attend orientations. So for example, students could attend school in the morning, and then in the afternoon when they're not in school, we would run an orientation program. Similarly, it allows our teachers to teach in the morning, and then they can meet in the afternoon, have conferences with families in the afternoon, and make sure that they're transitioning students back and forth. So We recognize that there's a burden on families to plan that additional time. We are really hopeful that people see the inherent value of not only the fact that students will have a full 5-day in-person learning model the week following that, but also see the value in us being thoughtful about the transition, that is something that people understand why we're doing that. But we want to also recognize that we are asking, again, a lot of our families during a pandemic. So that's really where we're at in terms of the elementary update. We are so looking forward to seeing all of our students on April 5th, whether they are in person or whether they continue to be remote. You know, all of our students are valuable to us, and we want to make sure that we welcome any student who's changing those programs and welcome all of our students back to that more full in-person learning experience. So that is elementary. At the junior high school, do you recall, our transition is scheduled, bless you, for Wednesday, April 28th. The elementary program, we talked about some of the half days. The junior high school wanted to have a transition on a Wednesday because a lot of the furniture moves for junior high are going to need to take place over the vacation week. And so that provides students on Monday and Tuesday an opportunity to come back, see what the new environment looks like, and work with teachers on those days to really understand what the transition will look like as they start to merge students from both cohorts together and welcome students who have been fully remote. The rest of that week at the junior high school, Andrew and his leadership team, along with the teachers there, have been planning some transition activities for students that are really focused kind of on blending students and addressing social emotional needs. So that's something that they're working on as well. And then the junior high also released its survey to families. Recently, anecdotally, we are hearing a very high percentage, potentially, of families looking to come back from a remote model to an in-person model at the junior high level. Andrew was very clear with his families that based on the number of students transitioning, he may have to make significant changes to team assignments at the junior high level just due to the current structure of the junior high school and the way they set up their schedule, because each teacher at the junior high has 4 in-person sections and 1 remote section. But if 50% of the students in a remote section choose to come in person, he doesn't have the classroom capacity to accommodate all those requests, so he's going to have to create additional in-person sections. He's going to have to merge remote sections, similar to what we were talking about at the elementary school. So we want to welcome students back who want to come back, but we also need to make sure people understand that there will likely be an impact on their schedules as a result. At the high school, we are so pleased that we were able to send out a notice to all of our high school staff, students, and families today that we have set the full in-person return date for high school students on Monday, May 3rd. It sounds like it's far away. That is 3 days after the junior high school. And I just want to make sure I drive that home. May sounds, I talked to Dawn earlier, and we both said May sounds different than April, but it's 3 days later. You know, there were a lot of complexities around a high school schedule that needed to be thought out. As I showed you in the last meeting, there were a number of larger sections that we had to make sure we had alternate classroom spaces for. We could plan for those. There's a lot that goes into lunch planning at a high school with multiple lunches and 500 students eating at each one. So I think we needed to be a little bit more cautious in the planning process. Larry also, in speaking with him, feels that the early May return date works well. It's also the start of AP exams. And one of the concerns at the high school was just simply the density of the student population and how many students are in halls and classrooms and everything else. And by kind of having it coincide with the beginning of AP exams, we know that there's going to be a chunk of students every day going to take AP exams. Because we need our gym for lunches now during the pandemic, which is typically where AP exams are given, we actually have rented out the Boxborough Regency. And we will be doing all of our AP exams over at the Boxborough Regency, but that allows us to de-densify the high school. What I'm really, really pleased about is our seniors are going to get to have a return to in-person learning and be able to kind of learn with each other for the last 3 weeks of high school and feel like there's some closure for seniors. For the rest of our high school students, there's also that opportunity to kind of come back together at the end of the year. So we're excited about that. Larry and his team are working on additional communications to all of the families at the high school, as well as a survey to understand who's transitioning back and forth between programs. We anticipate that'll happen in the next week and a half, maybe 2 weeks. So just a rough timeline of what's going on at the high school. Graduation and end-of-year activities, I think that's a notable comment as well. Again, Larry and his team have been doing a great job. They've been working with groups of students as well as some of our families who are involved in Project Graduation, so that there's kind of a broader base of input into some of the planning for the end of the year. One of the priorities that emerged among our high school students was to have a combined in-person graduation. They really wanted to try and get to that. So Larry and his team have an in-person graduation planned for Leary Field. The challenges around that, right now, the state guidelines don't allow it. So we're continuing to plan for it though, because we're convinced that the governor's office will amend graduation executive orders. We can't get it approved by our local Board of Health until the governor changes the executive order. But as soon as that happens, our plan is ready to go. We've already submitted it once and we know what we need to wait for, but we will submit it again, and we're confident in being able to do an in-person graduation. One of the challenges is we cannot move graduation indoors because of COVID restrictions. We cannot accommodate that number of people in an indoor environment, and I can't imagine a scenario where they're going to allow that at the state level or local level. So that means we have to have a rain date. Because we're also planning for an in-person commencement outdoors, people are going to have to be spread out during that commencement. So we've actually rented that same specialized equipment the town of Acton used, that big LED projector that was out in the parking lot, so that everyone can actually see what's going on during commencement and it's not a football field away. So trying to get that date coordinated and be able to plan for a rain date made it so that we ended up having to move graduation 1 day earlier. So graduation is now set for Thursday, June 3rd, and a rain date of Friday, June 4th. The high school is also planning for some senior send-off activities on the 1st and 2nd of June. And right now they're planning something called a sunset send-off on June 2nd, which is kind of a prom alternative, where it's outdoors. There are multiple stations, but the whole class can come together, and it's a combination of activities, some food, some fun things to do. So I just want to, thank Larry, his team, and all of the students who have been working with them to kind of develop those plans, because we know it's not the traditional plan, but we think it's going to be a great event for students. And then finally, I just want to highlight, Tessa and I continue to do community coffees. Our next community coffee is scheduled for April 7th, and that is going to be 7 to 8 p.m. And when we send out the notice, we'll send out the entire list of community coffees. But we have been busy at work planning for the return. That has clearly been our focus. I have to just, again, commend all of the leadership team on the planning, particularly around getting the elementary students back scheduled into classrooms. It required a lot of collaboration from our principals, but this is also the moment, and I know Mike recognized some people at the beginning in his public comments, but I have to thank our bus drivers are playing a huge role in this return. They are taking a lot of students onto buses now, and that means a lot of shifts from our bus drivers in terms of the number of students they're typically seeing on their school buses. Our custodians are working incredibly hard to make sure all the classroom furniture gets set up, to make sure that things are spaced properly, teachers have everything they need. Our classroom assistants, who sometimes can get overlooked, are dealing with the same conditions that all of our teachers are going to be dealing with upon their return. And they've just done such an incredible job for us this year. Our classroom assistants have taken over Zoom meetings. They've met with kids on asynchronous days. They're still continuing to serve students in person. They're covering lunches. They're covering recesses. I mean, this group of staff has gone to such great lengths to make sure that our kids are getting what they need. I want to make sure that we're recognizing all of our groups. And our office staff have gone to huge lengths. Our nurses go to lengths around contact tracing. This is work they've never had to do before. This is truly an entire district-wide effort on the part of our staffs. I know, like, administrators get all the glory in life. I know, sorry, I had to just throw that in. But in all seriousness, we love our classroom teachers. They have been amazing through this. Our admin team has been wonderful, and every single staff member in our district has gone to just such great lengths to make this happen for kids. And every 6 weeks, there's a new plan. And that is really taxing on people and draining. So we're doing it again. I can't wait to get our kids back, and I'm so excited for the end of the year. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions kind of about the update. And I know it was a bit long, but I thought that's an important update.
All right, Amy and Kira have had their hands up for a while, so I have no idea which one of you raised it first, but Amy is to the left of my screen. So go ahead, Amy.
Kira has given me the thumbs up to go ahead. I don't have a question. I just wanted to say yet another example of the tremendous work that teachers, the administration, every group that you just mentioned, just another example of how they have come up with some of the hardest, most creative ways to do what's best for our kids. And I can't say it nearly as eloquently as Mike did, but I have been in absolute awe since this pandemic hit at the way our teachers have, it's incredible. It's just incredible. And every time we get an update, it's just more of just being amazed and of the dedication and creativity and hard work that people are still willing to do in just the hardest time I've ever experienced.
Kira?
Thank you, Tessa. I'm going to echo what Amy just said, and I want to take a moment because I see there are so many principals with us this evening. Just as an RLP mom, to say thank you to every single principal, but thank you to the elementary principals for reabsorbing 100 students and taking them back. And thank you to Val for helping with that leadership too, and being creative and all those things that Peter just said. And I just want to express my relief and my joy and my gratitude that the teachers that we have on the remote side who've been so dedicated and innovative and hardworking are going to stay with us. And there are a bunch of teachers, a bunch of parents, myself included, who are going to sleep just so much better tonight, knowing that, I get to keep my two awesome teachers. So I cannot imagine the Herculean effort, though it's been articulated by so many people. I know that it's so much more. And I just want to say thank you 10 million times. Thank you 10 million times for everything that every adult in this district has done. Thank you 10 million times. It has made a difference. So thank you.
Diane?
I don't think that many people out there realize how hard this is. And I appreciate your level of detail, Peter, because there are people asking me, why hasn't the school committee taken up this or that this year? And I tell them it's because everybody's exhausted. We've been asked several times this year, and the brunt of the work is on you and the leadership team and the staff, the teachers, to turn, basically, the analogy that I have come up with is, it's kind of like turning a freighter on a dime. It's so involved, and these directives come down from DESE, and they're well-intentioned, but boots on the ground, this is like trying to turn a freighter around in like 10 minutes. So we really do appreciate, and we hear all the work that you're doing, and it does not go unnoticed, and I think more people should really just try to understand the level of detail, how granular you have to get to make this thing work. So thank you.
Jenny?
Just very quickly, Diane, you stated that we have been asked, and we weren't asked. We were directed by the state. And I think that that's really important because in my experience, both on the municipal side and the school side, what's going on in Beacon Hill has been, not helpful to a large extent. And it has just put a tremendous burden on our town government and on our school districts, with very few resources behind it. So thank you very much to everybody.
John, I'll let you go, but I want to remind everyone we are 45 minutes behind schedule and our presentation presenters are waiting. So go ahead.
Thank you. I wanted to follow up on what Ginny said because I think it's really very important. are two types of failures that have gone on at Beacon Hill. One is failure to act in a timely way. But the second, and deeper and perhaps more important failure is the failure to actually take positions on difficult issues. As we've gone through the vaccine rollout, and there are questions about what would an equitable rollout really look like, and what should we do? And legislators have been asked, and legislators have dodged. So this is a hard question. Everybody knows it's a hard question. What's not acceptable is to not say, okay, we're going to participate and help make a plan and do the best we can. And that really is sad. So, and it puts, the school committees and everybody else in the Commonwealth in a very poor position. So for any legislators that are out there listening, I hope they will do better.
Okay. I think it looks like we're ready to move on. So we have one presentation tonight. We have Deb in the auditorium with us, and Andrew Shen and David Lawrence are here to help enlighten us on math at RJ Gray. Right?
Are you going to promote Adam? Or I did promote him. Okay.
Great. Oh, yep, there's Andrew. Welcome, Andrew. Welcome, David. Peter's pulling up your slides.
We were actually told in a professional learning session never to tell someone you're pulling up their slides.
I wasn't in that professional learning session.
Peter, was that the same session where they said admins get all the glory in life?
That's right. Speaking of all the glory, we are so pleased to welcome. All right, Deb.
All right, thank you. Well, good evening. We're here tonight, so Andrew Shen is here with us. He's the principal of RJ Gray, and David Lawrence is the assistant principal at RJ Gray Junior High. And we're here to present to you our plan to make permanent the changes we made this year to our course structure at the junior high. So to start us off, next slide, thanks. I want to first set our work and this change in a much larger national context. This quote is from a draft of the new California middle school standards, and it articulates the significance that middle school grades have on students' future mathematics learnings and the opportunities they have after they graduate high school. And there is a rich, growing body of research to support that statement for students in general, and specifically for girls and students in groups that are underrepresented in STEAM fields. Next slide, thanks. So for a closer lens on the district context, the first two bullets you've seen before during our presentation about why our educators chose the illustrative math program. And you may have heard the term strength-based or asset-based approach to teaching and learning. And at the heart of that approach is unpacking one's beliefs about assumptions about what students can do. Like everyone, we have developed beliefs and assumptions that are comfortable to us, and we depend on them to keep us psychologically safe. Because of that, beliefs and assumptions can be very challenging to shift. However, in order to improve our actions to advance equity, we need to keep revisiting our beliefs and continually question how we might be stopping short of the belief that all students can learn, and how that's evidenced then in our actions. So changes in beliefs, or mind shifts as we call them, are really essential for creating equitable education systems. Our district is a system, and our beliefs about what's possible and the actions we choose to take make up the system. And so that takes us to the fourth bullet. The data on disproportionality by race, by gender, by learning disability, and by socioeconomic status in our high school leveled courses is a district problem for us to solve, meaning it doesn't just begin in high school. It begins in kindergarten, and it involves the four following bullets: our curriculum and our professional learning, which you've heard about before, our beliefs and our mind shifts, which I've just alluded to, our system of aligned support and personnel, which Peter spoke to earlier in tonight's presentation, and the last one, our structure and processes, and that's tonight's focus. Next slide, thanks. So we plan to make permanent the changes that we made this year to our course structure at the junior high. In 7th grade, all students will take 7th grade math next year. This was previously called Math 7 Expanded. In years prior to this year, 7th graders took one of two courses, either Math 7 or Math 7 Extended. So going forward, all students will take Math 7 Extended. It'll just be called 7th grade math. In 8th grade, all students going forward will either take 8th grade math, previously called Math 8 Extended, or Algebra 1. And in prior years, students took one of three courses, Math 8, Math 8 Extended, or Algebra 1. So again, going forward, all 8th grade students will take 8th grade math, previously 8 Extended, or Algebra 1. Next slide. So why and why now? This is a major step forward towards fulfilling our district's core values of equity and engagement, every student having the opportunity to engage in a rigorous and engaging mathematical learning experience, along with wellness goals by intentionally working towards a strong, positive math disposition for every one of our students. Our students need to see, feel, and hear about themselves as math learners. The first skill associated with social-emotional learning is self-awareness. According to Castle, self-awareness is the ability to accurately recognize one's own emotions, thoughts, and values, and how they influence behavior. It's the ability to accurately assess one's strengths and limitations with a well-grounded sense of confidence, optimism, and a growth mindset. So in short, self-awareness is the ability to understand oneself, and our goal is for our students to understand themselves as competent math learners, especially at this critical age for developing sense of self and identity. We have some momentum already in place to make this happen. The decision to unlevel Math 7 and Math 8 was already announced in the fall of 2020, this past year, and many supports are already in place to enable success, and Andrew will share those with you in the next few slides. Lastly, we have some comparable districts that have already unleveled junior high math for many years now and have terrific longitudinal data to share with us, that they have shared with us. Those towns are Newton and Brookline, and we've already begun a terrific collaboration with the Newton educators. So I'm going to toss this to Andrew.
Okay, thank you, Deb. Before I get into the slides, I just want to also thank the school committee for carving out some time for us. It's good to see all of you again. I think the last time I was part of a school committee meeting, it was still in the summertime, so quite a bit has happened since then. So it's good to see you all, and hopefully at some point in the near future we'll see each other in person. And if you don't mind me just sort of still deviating for a moment, I just wanted to take a moment to thank Angie for her comments earlier this evening, and also the follow-up comments that people made. It's much appreciated. I want to first echo the overview that Deb just offered to everybody. I think what's exciting is sort of how this captures a lot of our areas of aspiration as a district. I think I think we've become quite good at, and rightfully so, sort of offering sort of poetic statements about the things that we really hope to emphasize in our district around wellness, equity, engagement, access, and I think those are sincere. I think it's this work and these shifts and these changes and these commitments that really are then the next step in actually operationalizing that vision. With that being said, I think it's important to say that we recognize that this change, it does not come easily, that there's going to be a lot of heavy lifting involved, and that heavy lifting is often going to be on the shoulders of our educators and others who support our students. And I think as we're thinking about a structural change, we recognize that any model that you have has its strengths and has its challenges. So the model that we've had in the past has its strengths and challenges. The model that we're going into has strengths and challenges. It's just a matter of choosing sort of which set of challenges and strengths you want to have. And the reason why I think we're tilting towards, or the reason I know that I know we're tilting towards this new structure and the strengths and challenges that it brings is that with the lenses that we're now emphasizing around equity and engagement and access, this is the model that we think helps us get there most successfully. But again, as I just previously said, there's some heavy lifting involved, and there's going to be some work and support for our students and families, and certainly support for our educators who are going to be the ones who are advancing and implementing this work. So with that in mind, you know, the job that Deb and I have and that David has, David is our assistant principal who's worked most closely with our math department and really been the steward of a lot of this work. So thank you, David, is to position them and to support them throughout this journey. And so what I feel pretty good about is that there are supports that are already in place that I think we can leverage, and I think that we can develop and grow in service of this. And then there's some other new ideas that we're starting to toy with, and that I would imagine will evolve as we experience more over the next year or two. So just to actually go to the slides, math explorations, just for people who are not as familiar with that term, this before this current school year, we actually invested in an additional certified math teacher whose primary role was to actually offer an additional period where students, along with their 7th or 8th grade math class, would also attend this period and receive additional support for unfinished teaching and learning. That was already something that we had envisioned before pandemic schooling. It's something that we've utilized and benefited from this year, and we predict that we will benefit even more next year as we continue to support teachers and students. As we start to transition our 6th grade families, actually we'll be meeting with 6th grade teachers starting next week, and part of that conversation is to ask them to identify the students with whom they've been working, to say, if you could think about right now, you know, who are the students who we might want to connect with them and their families to consider this particular additional support. This year, we've implemented a high-quality curriculum through Desmos called Desbook, and it's been something that we've now had a year to develop, and the teachers are continuing to work with that curriculum, both within the department and also with David, because it's something that also overlaps with our district goals and the district curricular work, and so that's something that's in place. We also have continue to have additional tools, hopefully that we want to provide at the disposal of the teachers, such as online practice tools. Some of you might be familiar with IXL. It's just one program. There's many out there, but IXL is one that we've invested in and that we feel just offers another resource for teachers if and when they feel that students could benefit from additional practice tools, both inside the classroom as well as outside the classroom. And then certainly, you know, leveraging traditional, additional extra help from our math educators. The culture at our school is to provide extra help on a consistent basis, and that's something that we continue to work with students at this age to view as a resource and as an asset rather than something that they should feel hesitant about. One area that I'm actually toying with and want to think about more is, I don't know if everybody realizes that this year, through Deb's support and Peter's support, we enlisted a number of AB graduates who are college students to provide remote tutoring. And it's been an interesting model. There's been some benefits of it, and there's been some hiccups where, you know, we wish more students were using them at different times. I don't know if we'd use it or structure it in the same way if it's available to us, but I do think that the idea of enlisting some remote tutors and hopefully, again, some AB graduates is a model that we might consider, and being more precise about it. So rather than just having them be open hours, maybe connecting them with a particular cohort of students for whom we feel the benefit from it. And surprisingly or not, the students who have gone to these support sessions have often gone for the math support. Next slide, please. I think it is worth sort of reminding everyone that 6th graders are already in heterogeneous classes. I think that it's something that we will continue to want to learn from our 6th grade colleagues. We actually already have one current 7th grade math teacher who recently came from the elementary schools, and so I think she has a range of experiences that hopefully we can continue to benefit from. And then associated with that is I think Deb has mentioned in the past, our district's effort overall to commit to a shared curriculum. And as the junior high that welcomes 6 different students from 6 different elementary schools, and this year 7, including the RLP, having that common language and having a little bit more of a shared experience is something that I think will also contribute to our work moving forward. Ongoing professional learning, that's just something that we mentioned as a commitment that we know we need to make. Not all professional learning is created equal. We know that the burden is on us to actually develop and then to provide quality and productive professional learning with the feedback of our educators. And then finding and carving out time for additional collaboration for educators within the school year. One of the carryover practices that I think, amongst others from pandemic schooling, that we think might have some value is the fact that we have now embedded collaboration time for our educators that is not in addition to the school day, but part of the school day. And so if we are able to identify a model where we can continue to preserve that, we think that that is a structure, again, that can contribute to supporting teachers in the work that we talked about within this presentation. And then finally, Deb mentioned collaboration with other districts. I think what we benefit from is, in terms of this change, we're not, I think, by any stretch, the pioneers in this shift. And so we can benefit from the experiences and the hiccups and the lessons learned from other school districts that I think share some similar goals and some similar characteristics that we do. I think Newton and Brookline were mentioned. They've already had a meeting. I was told by a lot of the teachers this is the best sort of professional learning meeting that they've ever had, which, as someone who planned many of them for those teachers, I felt a little hurt, but that's okay. But joking aside, I think leveraging that relationship with the math teachers in those schools is going to be great, because they are the ones at the ground level who have experienced kind of the questions and the concerns that our teachers are raising now and need to work through. So we feel fortunate for that. So with that, I know, Deb, you have one more slide to sort of mention, and then happy to entertain questions and comments.
Thanks, Andrew. Yep, so actually, before we hear your thoughts and your questions, we just also want to state that, similar to what Andrew said earlier, that different models have different nuances and different things that come along with it. We know that there are going to be some uncertainties and ramifications for everything that we do. But this certainty that we know right now, and this is not atypical, this just happens to be a snapshot right now, in our lowest level 9th grade math class at the high school, 63% of the students are boys. 27% of those students are Hispanic. 68% of those students are from lower SES, socioeconomic status, and 81% of those students have an IEP. It's not okay. It's not okay here. It's really not okay anywhere. So while we may not have every single aspect perfectly arranged, we have a new curriculum, we have new thinking, we now have some new partners, and we'll have a new structure to help us get there. And so with that, we'd love to take your questions and hear your thinking.
Ginny?
I'm so curious as to how the proliferation of outside math study impacts this and your thinking around this, because by the time students show up in 7th grade, there are some students who have, spent a lot of time pursuing additional math learning, and some students who just haven't. So I'm just curious.
Are you curious about the research that helps inform our thinking?
Yes.
Yeah. So we've been really fortunate to do a lot of work with Jo Bowler out in Stanford. A lot of us have taken her courses, have read her books, have worked with her. And also with the BAM Society, which is the Boston Association of Mathematic Specialists, and the research that they've done around math learning. We were also part, I don't know if you recall, the Mindset Study with Boston College, and they're just finishing up now. COVID interrupted that work around how students think about themselves as learners, so I'm really eager to get back that research. So it's a combination of the research that scholars are doing out in the field, our own local associations, and then also just the internal research that we've been doing.
Okay, but I guess what I was trying to ask is, they're not all coming to 7th grade with, equal math experience. So how does that play into this change, if at all?
I don't know that it's going to change anything in terms of their experiences. What we need to do is figure out where students are in their learning. One of the things, as Andrew alluded to, is the similar math program that we'll now have. That's actually been one of our biggest challenges, is having 6 different math programs and that feeding into one school. And that adds an additional challenge for all of our 7th grade teachers. So the common language, the common routines that are built into this new math program, I think are really going to be helpful going forward. So,
Angie?
Yeah, thank you, Tessa. To continue Jeannie's question, so I'm still not quite clear how this new model is addressing, like Jeannie said, they're coming at different level and will all level be challenged?
So the math program itself is actually built very differently than the way we were taught math, perhaps with a textbook and the teacher sharing the new problems and then the new algorithm and then the students practicing it. This program is built, and I think David could probably speak even more eloquently about it than can I, but it's about building, again, those kinds of routines for students, different kinds of problems that are, we call them low floor, high ceiling, so that students can enter into the problem solving from lots of different ways. It's built from a UDL perspective. I don't know if you recall some of the aspects of the program we shared previously, but it's built with multiple, the universal design for approach for learning, so that those multiple access points are built from the ground up, and our teachers don't have to think differently about how to reach different students and make those access points for students. It also comes with, what's really wonderful, a whole segment of the program is called Are You Ready for More? So students who are ready to go even deeper into a particular concept have those opportunities. And so it really is built for a wide range of students. But alongside that is the skill set for the teachers also on how to have students work together collaboratively, to think about the big ideas about mathematics. Because math, the new language around math, especially even in fluency, is not about speed or accuracy, it's about flexibility and thinking. So it's actually a shift a little bit in how we're teaching mathematics. And we want to make sure that we have a program and instructional practices that help students learn that way.
Thank you.
I just have to say that this is completely amazing, and I'm so grateful that you've made this change. I have a 7th grader, and the change just in the 3 years since I had a 7th grader before is astounding. It is so much better, and and that's in the middle of a pandemic year where we have like the weirdest schooling ever. So I'm so grateful. My question really is around, this is great at the junior high. Like, there are many great things that happen at the junior high, but is this going to leave the junior high and extend when these kids leave 7th and 8th grade? Are they going to be sort of thrown into the same system that we're in now, or is there work to change that?
So those are ongoing conversations, and I'm excited to share that we've actually started some of those conversations at the high school with the department leaders, just scratching the surface around what are the implications for leveling, what does it mean for our students. Really trying to also look at it from the student perspective and hear their voices. Some of it comes out in our senior surveys, so we need to pay attention to that data. You heard Seneca when she was here for World Language. She really used her students' words to better understand and unpack how it impacted them. But that also came along with a shift in curriculum and pedagogy. All of those have to come hand in hand. When we talk about the high school, though, it tugs on other things like grades and weighted GPA. And so there are multiple things that we would need to discuss. But the Algebra 1 piece is actually our very next step to unpack Algebra 1 at 8th grade and how that relates to 9th grade. It's exactly the place that Newton was 5 years ago when they did this shift. The very next year, they started to look at Algebra 1. So we're going to be able to learn from the challenges that they faced, and hopefully they'll help us along the way.
Thank you. Amy?
Thanks. I am just beyond thrilled to see this happening. It has always bothered me that when my kids in 6th grade, by the end of 6th grade, it was predetermined at that point how far they would go in math at the high school, whether they could take calculus or not, which seemed absolutely my kids, everybody develops at a different pace. I think I just think it's fantastic, and I'm really appreciative of the way you have defined mathematics and really broadened that definition of what it means, and it taken it out of that kind of limited rote kind of learning that we all kind of have associated with mathematics. And just anecdotally, well, okay, fine. It's just a little story that, and I don't bring my personal kids into this much. Well, I just did, but anyway, so my kids are remote this year, and one of them was put into an honors class from it would have been an AE level class, simply because of the way it works. And it has been such an incredible experience to have him push himself in places where he wants to push himself, and in places where he might need to pull back a little bit, he does. So this idea of not leveling, he was really able to kind of stretch himself or pull back into, the other, and there was a safety net. So if he didn't do very well because the coursework was too difficult, there's a safety net there. So I just wanted to say that he's a junior, that there are lots of opportunities to allow students to be in these unleveled classes where they can stretch or pull back as they need to, rather than just being limited and labeled into this one particular box. Thanks.
I first want to say that I'm really glad to see that we're making this change as well. I think it's really important to remove that leveling as an area of stress for students who are moving from elementary school to a new environment, to also have to consider what level.
Sorry, Adam, we can't hear you. Sorry.
They can hear me in the room. You can hear me now? Just kind of. Okay. So I want to say I really appreciate this change. I think it's in line with what we're doing around challenge success and making sure that we look at the whole child and remove some of that stress about transitioning to a new program in a new school and learning about what math level I'm in. I think Andrew will be really happy to remove paragraphs from his introduction to junior high letters that talk about what level math program you'll be in.
How many paragraphs can he remove?
Probably not enough, but some. And I think that this year was a really great year to take the opportunity to remove the leveling, because while we are in a pandemic year, we also had the opportunity to have much smaller class sizes. And in a program where we're focusing on being able to meet the students where they're at and see where their needs are, I think this is a good opportunity to do it. My question is, what have the educators been saying about how they might handle this next year when they have twice the number of kids in the room at a time? And what are their thoughts around sort of being able to implement it?
Andrew or David, any conversations you've had at the ground level?
Just had one this morning. I did an observation of a math class, and that's one of the things we were talking about was the challenge of having twice as many kids in the room at the same time. But that's what we've had to do, forever. It's really just this 1 year where we had this this respite from a crowded room, and I have no doubt that they'll make the adjustment, without a problem. One of the nice things that Desmos does give you is there's a dashboard, so that some of the work is done online, some of it's done paper and pencil. But the beauty of it being done in the online with the online tool is that the teacher can see all of the work in progress as it's happening. And so it's a really wonderful way of being able to identify, who's struggling, who needs a little bit of extra help, who needs some stretching, and that scales really well. And And we were just talking about that. One of the things that the teacher was saying was, because I was noting how wonderfully she was able to kind of scan through that and then make adjustments to her teaching and to the work that she did around the classroom. And she said, I know, but with 24 kids next year, it's going to be so different. But then I reminded her, the alternative was what you did before, which was to walk around and go from seat to seat and look at what the kids are doing and have conversations. And that will always be the case. But now you have this additional way of viewing their progress as well. So it's just one more thing we'll have to adjust to, and we'll work together to do it.
Thanks.
I'll ask the question that I always ask with respect to new programs, and that is, if we look across that spectrum of students, from the students who either come in with weaker backgrounds or have more difficulty with the subject material, to our average students, to the strongest students, what is the objective evidence that we'll have a year from now or 3 years from now that says that this program has, impacted each of those student groups?
I think two things. The first is, as we alluded to before, how students think about themselves as learners, and we can do that pretty simply in making sure that, again, students are developing those positive dispositions towards mathematics, that they enjoy learning it, that they want to pursue it, all of those things that we hope for from a math learner. The second is looking at the proportionality in all of our classes. And it might take some time, but I think that's going to be some really clear evidence that we've done a good job in that work.
Yevon?
It's good to see these slides. Actually, I always like change for the better, but make sure we're going to get better results. So I have a bunch of questions actually, or comments. So first one is just for the clarification. For the Math 7 to Math expanded, right? 7 expanded. So extended will be the same as 7 expanded.
Right. 7th grade math will be the former Math 7
so they're
expanded.
going to be the same coverage.
And with the curriculum that we have now, it'll be, yes.
Exactly the same.
Well, with the new curriculum that we have.
Yeah, okay. So second, so that's a clarification. So let me just answer a very simple question. If I'm very bad, not good in math, and you put me in that program, and do I need to worry about I got an E?
I didn't hear the last
Worry about what?
So I did it very poorly, say, assuming, right, in the mathematics. I'm really not good at it. And so if you put me into that and compete with a lot of good students, in the math, do I need to worry about I gotta fail?
Yeah, I think back to the curriculum piece, the way it's designed from a UDL perspective so that it can incorporate lots of different learners where they are, many different access points, and students can learn the concept they need to learn, they can go deeper into the concept if they need to expand on it. But it's not any different than what our 6th grade teachers are doing with the exact same curriculum and the routines and the structures that they've been using for the last few years. That same group of students into 7th grade with the same kind of curriculum. So it's really just the very next year and being able to meet the range of students and the needs within one class.
So another comment is, so here the main goal for this is a kind of a universally designed class, right, to fit all the needs. So I see that's actually, so first of all, that's kind of so I checked the equity and equality, the definition. So that's kind of, it's not aligned with equity. So equity, you say, is achieve the fairness through treating people differently, depends on their needs. And equality, you say, is treating everyone the same, regardless of their needs. So what do you offer right now is kind of I offer the universal design class. So that's basically treat everybody the same.
Yeah.
So that's one. Second one is if you say I have low floor and high ceilings, wide range of options, right, for the student to grow. But I see that's very difficult. It poses great challenges to the teacher, actually. They have to really thinking about to adapt to, it's a continuous variable. Basically, you are dealing with a student ranging from 0 to 100. And I see this is kind of a teacher has to be very, very creative to meet the student's need, actually. I just wonder how are you going to deal with that?
Okay, so first to your question around equity and equality. So equality being everyone gets the same, gets equal. Within the class itself, the way, again, the curriculum is designed and the instructional practices, the idea that it's built so there are components to meet the needs of all, the range of students within the class. So there's a language component for students who don't speak English. There are additional components for students who might need additional support from a disability perspective. There are a range, again, the problems themselves are designed so that students, that's the low floor and high ceiling, not all of the teaching, but the problems themselves so that students can enter in and access the work in different ways. So that's where it does meet the range of learners. The equity piece that we're talking about is access to that curriculum. Because what ends up happening is early on, if students are leveled, the research shows that the gap just actually gets wider and wider. And so students don't have access to that grade level curriculum, and their sense of a learner of themselves becomes less and less, which then disengages them from the learning. And so what we want to do is make sure that we provide that high access for all students and then provide those additional supports. And not just within the classroom, as Andrew talked about, we have an extra block of math, which is flexible for students to be able to access throughout the year, if so deemed that they need additional time. We after school help with teachers, the tutoring aspect, and then also help for our teachers, as you mentioned. This is not easy. Andrew said this is a lift for our teachers, just as it is for our 6th grade teachers teaching a range of students in their classes. And so that's where we've partnered with other districts who've done this work, because we want to learn from them how they've done this. And so we think it's worthwhile effort to make sure that all of our students have that access, and that access and opportunity is the equity piece that we're talking about.
Can I just add on to that with just anecdotally? When I was a high school principal, and this is probably now going back 10 years when we made this move in my school, we looked at our AP classes and we didn't think that we were providing enough access to our highest level coursework in our school. We chose to eliminate all prerequisites, and we didn't require teacher recommendations either. And so we just opened up access to AP for students who wanted to enroll. The assumption that a lot of our community had was that AP scores would go down. Yes, you would get more students into the AP classes, but your scores would go down. We actually ended up increasing our AP scores, and for 3 years or 4 years in a row, we had a greater than 10% increase in student enrollment in our AP classes. And I think there's a great myth in our educational world that students have a fixed ability at some point around the ceiling that students can attain. And what we've found, and what all of the evidence has shown across, pretty much, I'm going to say almost every setting that the research can look at, is that when you eliminate barriers to high-level coursework, you don't decrease the top level of your student performance. You end up bringing everyone up. And, so it's that same analogy that this is not a pie where there's a limited amount of pie that people get, and then we run out of pie. So there's a scramble to make sure who wants the pie gets it. It really is one of those things that the more we provide each student access to rigorous content in coursework that is intentionally designed to provide really good entry points for students and provide, and I think Andrew did a really nice job talking to us, and provide all of the supports so that students who are entering it at a different level can really access support, and it's systemic. We end up raising the bar for everyone, and I think, I would venture to say that we will see continued high performance out of all of our math program, but what we'll see is more and more students being able to access upper level coursework as they progress through the system. And I think what that will mean is, and I would hope, is that we can really look seriously at condensing some of the lower levels of our high school program over time, and really continue to have more and more students accessing high level coursework. I know that feels like a leap for a lot of people in our community. I recognize that. But I think having gone through that process myself, I can speak firsthand to it. Now that's one anecdote, but I think the research also proves, time and time again that it actually holds true across settings. So I do appreciate that, because I think that's a comment that I know, having gone through it as a principal, I heard, I remember it felt like I had, people lined up with pitchforks at my, parent meetings that I had when we started talking about our math program in particular. But it really played out, and we raised the bar for everyone, and it was just a great experience. And, we then even experimented with not offering leveled courses. We stopped deciding that an honors class should be a right to real estate based on a previous year's work, and instead it was something that you earned through your current year effort and work in a course. And time and time again, the students and the teachers would come back and say, wow, it really raised the level of discourse, and we ended up with broader perspectives in the dialogue. And I think and just to speak to mathematics, I think what we see in math is sometimes there's and I sometimes see this in like a lot of the private programs that kids go to, there's a really heavy emphasis on the computational side of mathematics and maybe not as deep of a dive into kind of the theoretical side of math. And so students get very accelerated in one area of mathematics acquisition. And so that gives this sense that somehow speed and progress through coursework ends up being the kind of end result of that. But what ends up happening is sometimes students who have had different experiences, they bring this really different and unique perspective to math that quite simply is just a different understanding of math. There's the theoretical understanding of math, and then there's the computational and very concrete understanding of math. And so I think when both perspectives can join together and engage in dialogue in a curriculum, similar to what's now being taught at the junior high school, what it shows is actually all of the kids come to a deeper understanding by having that work together. So sorry for that. This is an area I'm so passionate about, but it's also something that I have a lot of experience with. So I just wanted to lend a little of, firsthand experience with that to kind of say, like, it really does end up having positive benefits for everyone. So sorry, Andrew and David and Deb, I just wanted to jump in on that.
Thank you for doing so.
Sure.
Thanks, Peter. Evelyn?
Yeah, I do not have a question. I just wanted to say thank you to Peter for eloquently explaining that situation, because he did what I wanted to say, I could not even do it. So thank you, Peter, for that explanation, because you hit the nail in the right places. And I also just wanted to say, Andrew, when my kids were in middle school, I loved your weekly newsletter. I read it all the time, and it motivated me, and it motivated my kids. And let me tell you, this is exactly like some of the undertones of what I was hearing Peter say was like bringing me flashbacks to all those beautiful Monday news that I was always reading and say, did you see what your principal said? And I was too embarrassed to ask to be on that distribution list. But I just want to say, the way that we look at equity, it has to be from a different lens. Every kid has to, and then kids are motivated in so many different ways. And I just want to say thank you to all the educators and all the administration for thinking about it with a different lens. A teacher doesn't have to always think that a particular kid needs to be in a particular class. Kids can motivate themselves, and sometimes when they make their own choices, it can be motivating to them. Thank you, Peter, and to all of you.
And
Thank you,
everyone,
everyone.
just to clarify, you loved every paragraph of Andrew's newsletters.
I read it every Sunday night, Andrew.
Wow, Andrew, you're really getting the short end of the stick tonight. But Andrew, I will say that on Wednesday mornings when I meet with Peter, I regularly advocate for how excellent your communication is. So
Oh, thank you.
you are appreciated.
Why say something in one sentence when you can say it in 5? That's what I say.
Andrew, my husband loves your shortened version versus the longer version. So thank you for accommodating all of us.
Yeah, I don't know if people know that this year I got some feedback earlier on saying it's a little long, so I've created actually an abridged version that they can click on.
It's all good, Andrew. Thank you all for staying late at our meeting and providing such a great presentation for some really exciting work. It's very much appreciated.
Thank you all. That was fantastic.
Thank you.
Okay. So there's a lot left on our agenda, and we are very, 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 very behind. We have approval of meeting minutes from March 4th and March 11th, and we have received a few amendments to the minutes of March 11th, so we're going to vote those separately. So if we could go forward with a motion for March 4th first, and then we'll talk about the minutes from the 11th.
I move to approve the minutes from March 4th, 2021.
Second.
Is there any discussion about those? Beth didn't receive any comments, so. Where did everyone go? Oh.
I'm trying to find the minutes.
Okay, I can see you up on your, on my computer. All right, we'll do a roll call vote. Adam?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Yeben?
Yes.
Diane?
Yes, and by this clock, you are right on time.
All right, Angie?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Kira?
Yes.
Evelyn?
Yes.
And me, yes. Okay, so Angie requested, yes.
I just noticed something else that was incorrect about the minutes from the 11th, so I'd like to suggest that we take this and move it till next week or next meeting, considering the time.
I think that that's a good suggestion. So we will not look at them and vote on them tonight, and the additional wording that Angie suggested will just be, we'll just move that, the entire discussion to the next meeting when we approve them then, okay? Marie, a kindergarten registration update?
Hi, everybody. I'll be quick because I'm traumatized because I think Diane just said I'm going to have to go through daylight savings change again. I'm kidding. Okay. It's not.
Are you in Zoom?
Yep, hang on. I am. All right, I'm going to spend a couple minutes on this slide. This is kind of the new information. Most of the rest of it you saw a couple weeks ago, but I just wanted to have it all in one place. So these are the enrollments by school for the families who have enrolled in kindergarten next year. Sorry. So you can see it's really well balanced across schools. So that's always nice to see. Peter, I'm having trouble. There we go. All right. So you can see we have between 43 and 56 kids per school. It's quite evenly distributed. You can see how many in each school, how many half-day, how many all-day. We have a total of 49 half-day students, 253 all-day students, that's 84% have requested all-day. They are distributed in kind of small numbers across all schools, so I don't think we're going to be able to run any dedicated half-day classrooms. So the half-day students will be in hybrid environment with all-day students across schools. As of right now, we have 302 students, which is well below the projection, which I'll talk about a little bit. So on the next slide, we show the plan for number of sections by school. So if we have 3 classrooms, we can put between 54 and 57 students in a school. So again, the numbers work out quite nicely. We might go a little smaller to begin with because we'll get more kids as we get closer. We have 17 kindergartens in the budget, which is the number of kindergartens we need. We're going to have 3 in every school except McCarthy Town is going to have 2 next year. That's a change. This year we had 2 at Gates and 2 at Conant. And next year we'll have 2 at McCarthy Town, and that allows us to start building Gates back up for when it moves into the new building. And we've been doing that at Douglas as well. So we moved to 3 at Douglas a couple years ago. So the good news is we budgeted the right number of sections, 17. I took a gamble that we would be.
Can you just stop sharing 1 second?
Okay.
Turn off for 1 second. No, your mic. Email, you said?
Email. I emailed you the link.
Sorry, we're just having a quick technical glitch.
All right, so I'll keep talking while Peter's doing it. Do you need the name?
No, I need to stop sharing the screen for a second. Window P. Window P? Thank you.
Over the last few years, you can see, thank you.
We're getting there. It's a process. There we go.
Yep. And you can go to the next slide now. Thanks. So we were at 330 students in 2018, 306 students in 2019, and 286 students this year. So we dropped 24 the year before, we dropped 20 this year. For next year, we have 302 currently. I'm estimating, I don't know, between 315 and 322. So I put 322 here for next year, which would be an increase of 29. But the projection was 379. So really much higher than the number of students. So the projection was 379. Right now I'm projecting 322, but we're only at 302 right now. So if we get around 322, that will be 57 lower than the projection. You can look at the history here that it's really been off quite a bit every year. And I'm looking into finding another demographer who can help us really look at this and figure out why this is happening. The difference between 379 and 322 is 3 classrooms. So we really, I'm glad we budgeted 17, but it's just surprising, and the same thing happened last year. So I've been recommending a budget below the projections for a few years now, and I don't know why they're projecting so much higher, but we're going to keep looking at that. This chart shows kindergarten by town, and it just sort of emphasizes how far off it is even in both towns. This number is higher because it shows a total of 78. So the bottom row is next year's kindergarten, and it shows 78 below because I haven't added in the projected kids yet. So this is really the enrollment right now since I broke it up by town. And as of right now, we're 68 below in Acton and 10 below in Boxborough. And lastly, you're aware of this, we've talked about it a couple times, but all-day kindergarten was set at 4,500. We brought it down to 3,750 this year. We used reserves, 180,000 from E&D to make that happen. We didn't run all-day K this year because of COVID. There was a goal to reduce it another 750 per year until it is fully funded. However, given the budget constraints and the fact that we didn't run all-day kindergarten this year, we've moved the $3,750 tuition to next year. That is in the budget. The $180,000 is in the budget at this point. So that's it. I just wanted to give you a brief update. We're going to run the lottery in May and notify families in May of their placements. That will give us more time to place our students with IEPs, and so everybody's notified at the same time. Thank you.
Diane?
Do you mind going back to slide 4? Is that slide? No. Yeah, that one. Yeah. So I've been watching this number go up, tick up since 2015, actually. And I just want to just say, because I've been thinking a lot about all-day K, since this kind of just reminded me, it just seems like 100 years ago that we were talking about all-day K. And it's too bad Ginny's not here, because she's a strong proponent of it. So all-day K, like the imperative of all-day K persists, even if we cannot fund it right now or deliver all-day K. Look at this demand, for one thing. And I re-looked up the statistics. So in 2019, 96% of Massachusetts students attended all-day K. In 2019, 86% of school districts in Massachusetts offered all-day K, about 300 school districts. And I haven't asked Deb this, but I would imagine that in order to achieve our literacy goals, tuition aid all-day K limits our ability to deliver more curriculum, and kindergarten is a window of opportunity, we have learned, for the development of pre-reading and early reading skills. So, I'll just point out for the new members and those who are coming on to school committee that we talked about this on November 21st, 2019. You can go in the archives and look at the minutes and then the packet. We talked about it again on December 20th, 2019. And the way we left it, the recommendation was that the senior leadership team, they presented several models to us with a promise to analyze the Student Opportunity Act and its impact on our Chapter 70 after Hold Harmless goes away. And that's a complicated area that I'll just leave to Dave, and it's not really a discussion for tonight, the funding model. But the recommendation was to see when all-day K might be funded through Chapter 70, and in the meantime, to continue to step down the tuition payments or just make a bigger move in what we then called years 3, 4, or 5, pre-COVID. So I just want to remind the people here who were involved in that discussion and introduce that idea to the people who were not here, that this remains an imperative. It's an important topic that should be revisited I was going to say maybe in more budget-friendly years, but I don't even think it can wait. I mean, there's kindergartners next year who are going to miss out on opportunities that we can't provide to them because we don't have all-day K. Thank you.
Evelyn?
Yeah, so my question is, whilst we wait for Chapter 70 and whilst we do everything we can do to reduce the fees, how are we accommodating families that cannot afford all-day K but need it now?
Good question, Evelyn. We do have scholarships available on a sliding scale for families. So we do accommodate families in need.
John?
Can we look at the previous slide for a second? So I have a math problem. You were talking about the number of students per section, but when I look at McCarthy Town with 53 students and 2 students, that seems to be large sections. What am I not understanding?
I was going to ask the same question, John, for what it's worth, because Gates says it has 3 sections, but only 43 students.
Can you go back up a couple of slides? I think I might have gotten, the numbers aren't in the right place. That one right there. So McCarthy Town has 43 and Gates has 56. I must have transposed them incorrectly or something. So Gates has 56 with 3 sections. Merriam has 53 with 3 sections. Yeah, maybe the schools aren't in the same order. I don't know. Yeah, so that's why. McCarthy Town has 43.
Okay, so we'll save the unjumbling for another time. I did want to follow up on Diane's comment, because on the one hand, I have a lot of sympathy for the idea that, if we get in early and do good things, that there will be lifelong consequences of that. But, just like the discussion around vaccination, it is just wrong not to say that if we want to do this, something else, is going to be impacted. And so we have to decide, with the finite resource that we have, what is the best opportunity to deploy that resource. And so while, I welcome, the opportunity to look at all-day K or other things, the discussion really needs to be more reflective of, we'll put this on the table and we'll take this back off, because otherwise you want to do everything, and that just can't happen.
Can I just add one little point to the point about the numbers of kids? We haven't run the lottery yet. So for example, McCarthy Town has 43 people who've requested it and 2 classrooms. A few of those students won't actually be placed at McCarthy Town, so that we get to our class size limits recommendation.
Thanks, Marie. I think that we're good, right? Okay, so the unfortunate next thing that's on the agenda is something that Jenny was going to propose to us, and she had to leave a half an hour ago. So I think that number 1, the vote to support resolution number 1, MCAS and high stakes testing in favor of canceling the MCAS and access test this year, is pretty self-explanatory and something that we have discussed a little bit as a committee. The second one, not as much. And as I said, Jenny was going to present tonight on these. So my suggestion, unless someone opposes it, would be that we vote on the first one and hold the second one until Jenny can give us a more fulsome explanation. Is that all right with everybody? Okay. So is there a motion to approve the first resolution?
I'll read the motion out of our packet, which is quite thorough. So I move that the Acton Boxborough Regional School Committee vote to support resolution number 1, MCAS and high-stake testing, which was approved by the delegates to the Massachusetts Association of School Committees by a vote of 112 to 9 with 2 abstentions at the MASC annual meeting on November 7th. I further move that the ABRSC vote to institute a moratorium on access testing for the 2020-2021 school year. In doing so, the committee recognizes that our educators have worked tirelessly to stem the learning interruption and loss resulting from the pandemic, and that our educators will use local assessments and planning to determine what each student needs and how best to meet those needs. I further move that the Superintendent of Schools be instructed to inform Governor Charlie Baker, Education Secretary Jeffrey Riley, and our state legislative delegation, Senator Jamie Eldridge, Danilo Sena, Tammy Gouveia, of our position in favor of canceling the MCAS and access tests this year.
Second.
Are there any questions? Yevon raised his first.
It's just a dumb question. I just wonder if Daisy has some flexibility or something about taking the MCAS exam, say, remotely, or has to be in school?
So this is really just a statement about the committee's feelings about MCAS and not really about the nuts and bolts of how it's being presented. Is that clear?
Yeah, in fact, in our packet, after the motion I just made, it details out the resolution that we're voting in favor of, which is one that was already passed at the MASC annual meeting.
John, did you have a question?
Yevon, just a real quick answer to your question, though. My understanding is there is no remote option for MCAS. They're requiring all students to be in person.
John?
I just wanted to comment that it's my understanding that this need for testing starts at the federal level, and that without a federal waiver, Charlie Baker and the legislature actually have no latitude. So to the extent that that's a true statement, if people are keen to help make this happen, I would encourage everybody, not just the committee, to email their representatives in Congress, in the Senate, and President Biden to, again, institute the federal waiver, which enabled this to happen last year.
Can I just, to John's point, there was in the MASS resolution that they made public, there is a provision where the state can apply for a waiver even without the federal, without the feds giving them access to a waiver. If they want to use local assessments in lieu of the federal assessment. So they don't have to wait for the federal government to issue a waiver for them to apply to. They actually can go ahead and apply for one using local assessments.
Yeah, I was aware of that possibility. I would expect the federal government to behave as Commissioner Riley did when Peter asked for a waiver. So I wouldn't count on that.
Okay, are we ready to vote? Yes, okay. Adam?
I have my hands up. Whilst we're on MCAS, can we also make sure that we waive the SATs for the juniors? I don't know what power we have to do so, but that's also something that we need to think about.
All right, well, not something we can tackle tonight, Evelyn, sorry. All right, Adam?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Yevon?
Yes.
Diane?
Yes.
Angie?
Yes.
Kira?
Yes.
Evelyn?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
And myself, yes. Okay, sorry, so much divided attention. I have a child texting me because they're not happy. So, all right. Anyway, subcommittee and members' reports. Adam has some important naming policy and procedure things to talk about.
So as I mentioned last week at our meeting, we do need to form a naming committee for the new school building. And we are looking for 2 volunteers from the school committee to join that naming committee. As I mentioned, we have to have a name in place basically by the end of the 2021 calendar year. So I'm asking now if there's anybody who's interested in joining that committee. I'm not sure we know what the commitment is just yet. We have to form a larger committee of community members and interested parties as part of the entire naming committee. So the first step is to get the folks from the school committee assigned and then work with the administration to do some community outreach to get some volunteers from the community. And then once that's done and the committee is formed, then a plan will be put in place as to how to go about and solicit suggestions in line with the policies that we have in place for naming buildings.
Yep, I'll do it.
Amy, here.
Yep, that's super. Is there anyone else that would be interested in joining Amy? I think that the work of this initial committee is going to be to start identifying some of the stakeholder groups that need to be included in the larger committee, and then there would be changes to the committee and the time commitment going forward after that. Was it January that we really have to?
Yeah,
I don't remember what.
Calendar.
The end of this calendar year is when we really need to have some things in place and make some decisions. So it's a shortened timeline in terms of, maybe you don't think that's a short timeline. Maybe that's a long timeline, but there is time to be working on it. So is there anyone else that would like to join Amy in that? You can think about it. And you can email Adam and Amy at the moment. I'm not sure that Adam wants necessarily to continue with this. He's serving on a lot of committees and already on the building committee as well. So maybe you could send Amy an email and you can copy me. How about that?
Yeah, I'm happy to entertain emails. I'm happy to take that on.
Okay, and then just copy me and we will move forward with that.
Yep.
Okay, great. Diane.
Yep, so thank you everyone for the feedback that you gave me on these two policies, IGA and IGD. So Tessa, given that it's, 8:40, I was kidding. There's one of the comments, the feedback was substantial in aggregate. So there's one of two ways we could do this. We could deliberate as a full committee, or I could take this feedback back to the policy subcommittee, which is meeting Friday, yes, the 26th, and then come back to the committee with a recommendation and a new, perhaps some revisions to the existing policy.
I think that given the time of 9:40, that seems appropriate, if that's okay with everybody. I think that these are some important policies to be able to have the time for the discussion, and it doesn't feel like we do now. What do you?
I just have a quick question. Are we under any time crunch to adopt these policies? Sometimes we have legislative requirements for that. I'm seeing shaking heads over there, so I think we're good.
Okay, so we will do that. If you have any additional comments, please get them to Diane before Friday. So, statement of warrants and recommendation to approve, and I left my packet at home, so one of you two is going to have to do that.
Go for it, Adam.
I had to find it in my packet, and since John was so generous to make the motion for the budget, I'll make this one. I move that the school committee vote to approve payroll warrants as follows. Number P2119, dated 3/11/2021, in the amount of $2,727,758.49. Payroll deduction warrant as follows. Number 21-019 PR, dated 3/11/2021, in the amount of $539,899.15, and vendor warrant as follows. Number 21-018, dated 3/4/2021, in the amount of $1,594,506.36.
Second.
Roll call vote. Adam?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Yeben?
Yes.
Diane?
Yes.
Angie?
Yes.
Kira?
Yes.
Evelyn?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
And myself, yes. Okay. And that brings us to the end of the agenda. We have meetings on April 1st and April 15th at 7 p.m. Our next community coffee with me and Peter will be via Zoom on April 7th. Is there anything else that we need to highlight?
Just one item of note that's new. The Emerson Hospital is conducting the Community Health Needs Survey, so we have a link in the packet for anyone who would like to participate.
And actually, there is one other thing. BLF met the other night, and town meeting, although we are still preparing everything and the warrant's still going out at the same time, town meeting in Boxborough appears to be moving to Saturday, June 12th, which is a significant change from when it was going to be on Monday, May 10th. So we're not changing timelines, and their warrant deadlines are all the same, but in order to hold a hybrid outdoor-indoor meeting, that was the plan that apparently was decided. So, yes, John?
Well, I'll just say thank you to that, because as a practical matter, I think that helps when the town meetings are closer together, because obviously we're going to work together collaboratively to have a presentation for Boxborough Town Meeting and Acton Town Meeting, and this actually will make that process come together. So that I'm happy about.
I agree, and the additional information that I know you were happy about having for Acton Town Meeting will now apparently probably, whatever is available for Acton will also be available for Boxborough.
And speaking of more data, for people who are anxious for the upcoming Acton town election, the Acton, the Asian Society had a nice candidate forum with school committee candidates, and that video is up online for anybody who would like to see a little bit more of the candidates in action.
And the Acton town election will occur before we have our next meeting. So I believe it's March 30th, right? All right, so get out there and vote. Anyway, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So you guys need to be in person if you want to be able to make those motions.
All right, I'll second.
Too late.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeben.
Yes.
Diane.
Yes.
Angie.
Yes.
Kira.
Yes.
Evelyn.
Yes, with gratitude.
Amy.